So we've saved the best for the last, right? And I think the only way to get this size of group to stay, we've leaked a few people, but the only way to get most people to stay is to have Mirai and Rukmini together on a stage. It's a it's a huge honor and privilege for me personally because Mirai and Rukmini are two of the social impact leaders who I admired the most personally, and the work that they've done over the last 30 plus years has been instrumental to all of the other big people on the stage who have said so many good things about early childhood education, care, development, and so on. So it's wonderful to be here with them. And we were, as preparation for this panel, we had something else in mind, and then they both got together on a call and made something very different, which is reimagining the worlds of women and children, which is actually probably the essence of everything that was discussed today, and especially with women in terms of young mothers. So what are the worlds of young mothers and children looking like today, and how can they be reimagined in different contexts? So that's the discussion today. And let me begin with the first question to Mirai, which is actually to help set the sort of the beginning of it. How is ECCE and childcare actually connected? How is ECC important for, like, both these concepts, how are they also important for women in their broader lives as well? If you could share a little bit, given the amount of work that Seva has done on this topic.
Sure, Aziz, and delighted to be here with a wonderful young audience of future ECC leaders, and also with old friends like Dr. Vinita Kaul, Rukmini. And I would like to congratulate Udan at the outset, and rather Rocket Learning, for this wonderful conference. Coming to the question you asked, yeah, they deserve a bigger applause. Good. You asked how are ECC and childcare connected, and how its importance for women. So I'll start with children, although I must say in Seva we came to children through women, because as you know, we organize informal women workers. So what we've learned all these years in running creches, Anganwadis, Vinita ji, for a long time through cooperatives, women's Bal Seva cooperatives, is that these are all connected. You can't separate out. So it's not sort of one magic bullet of early childhood, but it's that holistic and integrated and comprehensive approach which most benefits young children and helps them towards healthy growth. So what we've seen is that childcare is not just about safe space and custodial care. And now, fortunately, young parents, women and fathers as well, men as well, are much more clued in about the connections between early childhood education and education in general than before. So I guess what I'm saying is no one element alone works for growth. We've also seen many of the young children who come because they're children of informal workers, they are malnourished. Many times the parents say, bolte nahi hai, kuch karte nahi hai, they just sit in a corner. And not only with nutrition, but with early childhood education and stimulation, within a few months we see a sea change. It's exciting. It's a small input, but it makes all the difference. So I think in some it's critical. They're very connected. As far as women are concerned, we've been hearing for 50 years, and every day we say, kuch kariye. Please extend our childcare. 2-3 hours or 4 hours at ICDS is not enough. I know some states are doing more, but in our state in Gujarat, we're still not into full day care as per the working hours of poor working women of this country. So yeah, there's a big demand. And obviously, as everyone in this room knows, women can go out to work, they can earn. And I remember one thing that's fixed in my mind from tobacco workers when I first started working, women tobacco workers, they said, through this childcare, at least now we can bring dal and sabzi into the house. Earlier we just had rotla and some chilies and salt. So, it sets up a whole virtuous cycle. One more quick thing. We saw that the older siblings, particularly girls, didn't go to school because they had to be home taking care of their younger siblings. In fact, we found in a study 70% of the older siblings entered school for the first time when there was full-day childcare. So that's what I mean by it sets up a virtuous cycle, not just for women and children, but the entire family.
Thank you, Mirai. You've illustrated very clearly, I think, the holistic nature of all of these things and how it sort of impacts so many parts of a child or mother's life. And hopefully the public pull that you're mentioning is also pulling, our political and bureaucratic leadership towards this direction as well. I'll pick up one point that you mentioned, which is, how things have been changing. And both of you have been working, with young mothers for a long time now, and India has probably, changed a lot during that time. So next question to Rukmini actually is that, your aspirations and your dreams hai, and I think we'll try to make it a bit bilingual as well, but your dreams hai and, the day-to-day practices of young mothers, how have they changed over the years? And same bhi kya raha hai? Badla kya hai aur same kya raha hai?
So, of course, first of all, before I answer your question, if we were in a cricket match and it was a test match, then we would be called night watchmen. And if you look up the definition of night watchman, it is lower order batsmen are brought up to keep the game going till the next day. Okay, so luckily you are a one-day match. And in the one-day match, then we are fast bowlers who have to come and increase the score so that the viewers keep watching. So no pressure, Mirai, but I just thought we should say this, that being last in the day has consequences, and it's our job to make sure that while we are speaking, nobody else leaves, right? So, also, Aziz, I have to say that through the whole day, I was thinking of the Anganwadi in Lucknow, which I visited with Aziz some years ago, where the children were very taken up, and Anustup, I don't know how you will calibrate this observation, whether it was effective time or not effective time. There was a lot of conversation in that Anganwadi about the size of Aziz's shoes. So the children were looking at his shoe and looking at their chappals and making a lot of comments. Now, in a proper study, this would not be counted. This would be counted as off task. But there are things that kids do which are very interesting in Anganwadi.
And Rukmini put up a photo on Facebook with MBA boots and preschool boots, and it was quite a difference. So I should have that photo.
Okay, but now going back to your question, I think that, Pratham started, many years ago in Bombay in the slums. And I think at that time, ICDS coverage of urban areas was even lower. And I think this still continues to be a problem, that if you have a context in which most places where mothers or children live or families live as unauthorized, then what is the provision that you actually provide for them? So the Balwadi model that we used to work on then was actually a very local model. Because बच्चे इतने छोटे हैं तो वो तो चल के कहीं जा नहीं सकते हैं, तो बहुत ही अपने गली में, अपने मोहल्ले में, how do you set up things? And in some ways, I feel it was a way in which the community had to come together. कि अगर जगह ढूंढनी है, तो either it has to be a place which is available, and we could not pay rent. Nobody could pay rent in Bombay. Nobody still can pay rent in Bombay. तो जगह अगर ढूंढनी है, तो वो कौन सी जगह होगी? It has to be. I remember we had an evaluation. We are big into evidence and all that. So we had an evaluation, and the evaluator said कि Pratham runs their programs in very non-child friendly spaces. So I said, all of Bombay is a non-child friendly space. हमने कोई ना खास नहीं बनाया non-friendly space. So it has to be a place जहाँ पे बच्चे आसानी से जा सकते हैं. The instructor was usually, somebody asked us, how do you recruit your instructors? And we would say कि the recruitment is whoever comes forward, whoever is open, and then we can think about how do you actually make that person better over time. We have a lot of conversation today about capacity building and teachers. I think we forget that you have to really enjoy kids first. And उसके लिए कोई qualification नहीं होती है, unless somebody has come up with a toolkit which says interested in children. So I think that whole model made us see how communities can actually organize in very simple ways. I think what Anustup was also saying, scaling is full of many small things, and many small things that many people feel is possible. I don't think that has changed, but I do think there is a lot more focus these days on somebody else providing, whether it's the government or someone else providing this whole big infrastructure for conducting these things. I'm not saying government should not provide, but I think there's a lot of zeal and opportunity that is there within any society. I also noticed from the morning, and maybe I was gone for a bit in the middle, nobody has mentioned the private sector at all. Huge numbers of children in India in rural areas attend private schools and preschools. If you look at the ASER data, we have data from 2006 onwards on where children from age 3 to age 8 are actually enrolled. And you'll see that in many states, Anganwadis are a minority. And in those states, actually, बच्चे चले जाते हैं to private schools who don't take children in first. They take you in, I don't know, I used to think of lower KG and upper KG, but आजकल lower KG भी हो रहा है, because 3 साल चाहिए हमें before you can get to first. My granddaughter, when she graduated to first, it was like a huge thing in the family कि ये बच्ची इतने साल already बिता चुकी है in schools without even getting to first. So I think that there is, I feel that there is, many things are still the same. We could still improve. I think the importance of early childhood was known, but is more widely known. I feel like maybe the options for how you organize as good a childcare or ECE as possible is probably getting more narrower the more that there is top-down views on how these things should be done. But let me stop there. Yeah.
No, I think you've already given us a lot of food for thought, and I think जो आप बोल रहे थे कि कोई इंडेक्स नहीं है कि बच्चों के साथ टाइम स्पेंड करना इम्पॉर्टेंट है. I think that is very interesting observation, because जो हमने देखा है, we work with primary school teachers, preschool teachers, आंगनवाड़ीज, and you do of course as well. हमें जो दिखा है कि आंगनवाड़ी workers actually entered the profession a lot for this. उनके 5-6 काम हैं. हमने एक्चुअली सर्वे किया है एक कि आपको जो आपके 5-6 काम है उसमें से आप ज्वाइन क्यों किया था आपने. एंड इफ यू आस्क आंगनवाड़ी वर्कर्स तो इन्वेरिएबली नंबर 1 होगा बच्चों को सिखाने के लिए, पढ़ाने के लिए एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट, राइट. वी एंजॉय स्पेंडिंग टाइम विद देम. बाकी होम विजिट करना तो चलो करना पड़ता है, मतलब ठीक है, मतलब आई थिंक दोज आर इवन दे आर मोर laborious tasks as well, right, sometimes, and so maybe those are other factors that come in mind, but invariably you will get that answer by overwhelming majority that we like spending time with children. And so that's why we actually like the Anganwadi system, because they actually do like spending time with children, in my guess more than actually the teachers do. Is pe maybe Mirai, if you want to also give your perspective on how young mothers have changed, building on what Rukmini has said already.
Sure. So we mostly work with informal women workers, and we see a real generation shift. I remember when we started out 50 years ago, most of the mothers were anguta chap on the registers and stuff, but now those days happily are gone. The younger mothers are more educated, not just 10th pass, but even beyond. Greater understanding of the value of education in general, including early childhood education, although they may not know the full aspect of it. They see much more on the net. They look at things. They see what other countries are doing. वहाँ पे ये हो रहा है, Tamil Nadu में ये हो रहा है. They ask us questions much more in our mothers' meetings, in our creches. English, that is a big demand. We hear, Angrezi to sikhao, please. So we have to tell them we can't start teaching children who are in the gudiya, in the cradle at 2, English at this point. Also a willingness to pay. That's something interesting we find, that we're ready to pay. In fact, in Seva Bank, some of our biggest loans are education loans. There's such a premium on education. Then digital tools, they're much more tech savvy. They form their own WhatsApp group in the creches, and among the mothers they're sharing, isko kya hua, what worked with this, what didn't work, what's the challenge here, those kinds of issues. But I also think fathers, let's not forget the fathers. At Seva we've always worked with women, but about 15 years ago we started interacting quite intensively with fathers. And we found a great amount of interest. They come for meetings, they give inputs, they give really good suggestions, and also the younger fathers are much more active. What's remained the same is the huge demand and need, as I already mentioned. I forgot to mention one of the points in the virtuous cycle is women mention again and again peace of mind, which is not something that, perhaps we focus on a lot. So the fathers, but the need is there, and dreams. Again and again for 50 years we've been hearing कि जो हुआ मेरे साथ सो हुआ. But I want a better life for my child. So that hasn't changed.
That's a lovely note to answer the not change. Okay, perfect.
I want to add something about change. I feel that with this proliferation of private preschools across all of India, there has been, I would say, and I always, this is a Vinita thought, but I'm going to say it not as well as she does. There has been a bigger downward movement of academic stuff into preschool stuff. And I think this NEP and aajkal jo ho raha hai is a very big opportunity to reverse the trend, to say actually much of our primary school needs to be built on the preschool principles. So the more that you see aspirations, the more you see the need. I mean, often, I'll give you one example. We do a lot of work with Maharashtra government with mothers groups. There's a mothers group almost attached to every Zilla Parishad school. This is for first and second. And mothers groups में बहुत सारी चीज़ें जाती हैं. I think like what you guys also said. And one mother said to me कि ये सब तो ठीक है, but मुझे लग रहा था कि private school में जो होता है वो better होगा. तो मैंने ना उनके भी workbooks ले लिए, and आपका भी जो लिया. And I was holding my breath to see what she will say because the whole village was listening to her. And she said, but मेरे बच्चे को ना आप लोगों की चीज़ें ज़्यादा अच्छी लगी. Because वो जो workbook था, जो private school में था, वो सारे सिर्फ numbers and letters के ऊपर थे. So this demonstration that there can be a broader breadth of skills, that you should watch children to see what they like as opposed to looking at the curriculum and doing only what, hopefully the curriculum is based on what children like, hopefully. Those who have done studies, I hope, will corroborate this. But I think that this importance of actually thinking, ground up as opposed to top down, I feel the top down stuff has increased over time. And some of it is not coming from, it's coming in the whole ecosystem. Just like I feel that CBSE holds the keys to the kingdom of Indian education. Similarly, I think what happens in private school practices, you see everywhere, especially in the cities, कि भाई 2-1.5 साल में बच्चे प्ले स्कूल में जा रहे हैं, तो पीपल फील कि ज़्यादा एजुकेशन मेरे बच्चे को मिल जाएगा, ज़्यादा जल्दी स्टार्ट कर दें तो वो सही होगा. So I think these are some changes which are coming with our so-called development, where you see that more education is better, more effectively I must participate. But I think now is the time to kind of turn the tide a bit to do it in the right way.
Yeah, and also to look at quality. I think also quality. There may be all these private preschools, but in some of them, I'm afraid, and I'm sure Dr. Vinita Kaul and others would agree, the quality is questionable. So, and people pay through their nose for this.
Yeah, no, I think you bang on, and I think I'm glad that in the private preschool versus Pratham mother groups, Pappu pass ho gaya in the right way, right? So at least the Pappus, the kids liked it.
Pinky pass ho gayi.
Pinky pass ho gayi. ठीक है. Pinky pass ho gayi, which is great. So actually, I have an anecdote of my own for that. जब हमने शुरू किया था Rocket Learning, when we started off, so we used to make this content for parents. We said parents ही तो करेंगे activity, children shouldn't maybe not even see the videos, screen time and all. So we said कि boring भी बना देंगे तो ठीक है, as long as it's pedagogically sound, the parents will understand and they will want to do it. But then we learned from parents कि if it's boring, then the child doesn't want to do it. And the child doesn't want to do it, even the most motivated parent eventually says कि मेरा give up, I'm not going to do it because the child is getting bored, right? So I think absolutely the children liking it is important. But on the flip side, unfortunately, when you go to a Anganwadi or a preschool and you ask a parent कि अच्छा आपके बच्चा क्या जानता है, तो almost invariably the answer is कि अच्छा बेटा 1 या बेटी 1 to 30 बताओ. So Pinky will say 1 to 30, right? And all the ABCD or twinkle twinkle, right? And so I think the aspiration, as Rukmini said, private preschools have pulled it to that extent that we don't have that awareness among parents that the play-based approach is is a better approach. Play-based, activity-based approach is the better one. And I remember Rukmini and I were on a committee of the WCD ministry where there was a lot of debate on this because some members of the committee were saying that the point of English being aspirational, English shuru karna chahiye nahi, and there were others who were very strongly saying कि English बिल्कुल नहीं होना चाहिए, छुओ भी मत English को. And I think the question is how do you form a balance between the two so that you're meeting aspirations while also changing aspirations of parents, right? And how do you do that? So I think those were the main things. On the digital point, I really liked how you said what we are seeing is that digital penetration has gone up, familiarity has gone up, comfort has gone up. Urban is much ahead of rural, but rural is catching up. And we thought when we started that we were ahead of the curve by doing all this digital WhatsApp group pe bhej rahe hain content and all that, but many of our users are now on Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts. Instagram to actually come hai hamare segments mein, but YouTube Shorts is there. So maybe we're thinking, are we missing a trick by not being on YouTube Shorts and letting anyone who wants to access it come on YouTube Shorts and take it? And what are we doing? So I think but things have changed, but the importance of their realization or caring for the child is still there. So that's a positive. I think moving to the sort of next theme, and Rukmini, you mentioned that we talked a lot about public provision. We didn't talk too much about private, but there's a lot of private provision these days, which is well compensated. But there are informal arrangements also, right? And we discussed this a bit in the pre-talk. So Rukmini, maybe question to you is that, what are the informal arrangements that communities have come up with? How do they fit in the overall picture? Is there something that can be done to encourage those in a systematic way, or should we let them be?
So I would say that, we are doing a lot of work because we feel like in addition to whatever happens in the institutional side, which could be Anganwadi or it could be pre-primary in the school, we feel that if we want to reach, whatever goal you say, even if I look at a Nipun goal, by whatever year, which can be debatable, I feel even if you take last year as a warm-up year, the first year of returning from COVID, and you count the current year as year 1, even then in 4-5 years, if we want that by 3rd standard, बच्चों को लगभग basic चीजें अपने आप से सोचना और करना आ जाए, then you need a big force, and you look at the data of where we are today in grade, supposing you look at standard 3 or last 10 years, I'm looking at ASER data, you see incremental increases over time. So it's not like we are not changing, but we are changing slowly. You want to change this in the next couple of years, which we are all agreeing on that it needs to be done, then a huge, big new input is required, a big force is required. And according to me, that big force is family and community. Because institutionally जो हम कर सकते हैं वो हो रहा है. अब सुबह से हमने सुना कि कितने पैसे खर्च हो रहे हैं, कितनी ट्रेनिंग हो रही है वगैरह वगैरह, वो सब हो रहा है. But you need to bring in this other new force, which is, so we have been doing a lot of work, whether where Pratham works directly or where we work with state governments on actually constituting these mothers groups. मोहल्ले में वैसे भी mothers होते हैं. There is a whole, I think, generation which has seen their mothers be in self-help groups. Some of the, I'm from Bihar, so in Bihar, Jivika is a very big force. लोग कहते हैं कि election जिताना हो तो you need to have self-help groups. I'm sure self-help groups do other things as well. But there is a culture, the reason I bring it up, there's a culture of women doing things together locally. And we are seeing, and we are learning actually, because very often it's the mothers group who make demands. Like for example, recently I was with the mothers group who said, "अब आप अपना ना वो सब भेजना बंद करो, हम ही भेजते हैं आपको." So this is again a big point, that to say that we have things to contribute to the system, we need to be recognized. When Anita Karwal was Secretary Education and the NEP document, not NEP, NCF document was being made, or guidelines, I forget, there's so many documents. What was it? Nipun. I have plants in the audience who will tell me to say the right things, okay? So there we said that, there is this thing that we've been using ourselves, and we think it's a good idea, is the school readiness melas. स्कूल रेडीनेस मेला क्या है कि बच्चे जब फर्स्ट में जाएंगे उसके कुछ महीने पहले एक मेला करो गांव में. मेला कैन बी एनीवेयर, कैन बी सरपंच के घर के सामने, कैन बी इन स्कूल, व्हाटएवर पीपल फील, एंड उसमें बूथ रहते हैं. वाई बूथ्स? बिकॉज हम सबको इलेक्शन की आदत है, वी नो कि पहले बूथ में जाओ, अपना ये कागज दिखाओ, सेकंड बूथ पे जाओ, सो इट्स अ नोन फॉर्मेट. But each booth has actually activities. Now, why are we doing this? It's a long-winded answer to your question, but because we want to say that there are many ways in which this foundation needs to be broad. You need a breadth of skills. So, एक counter पे होगा कि paper folding है. Paper folding के लिए I don't need one pitara to come from wherever it comes. वो गांव में मुझे अखबार मिल जाएंगे. Another one is for categorization, seriation. तो वो भिंडी लगा लो from big to small, आलू प्याज अलग कर लो. And the people who participate, everybody can watch, everybody is welcome, but the people who participate is mother and the child. Fathers can come, but very often mothers are the main ones who come. Now, all of this is an attempt to both, I think, broaden the idea of what foundation skills are. And secondly, it is to say that the family plays a very key role. So you are the center of this whole journey. And it's not like the whole village is not watching. I've had arguments with grandmothers who say, हमें क्यों नहीं ले रहे हो? So I said, हमने आपको बाहर कहाँ रखा है? आप भी आ जाओ. पर फिलहाल मम्मी और बच्चा भी इसको करेगा. So how do you create a culture to say that all the activities that can be done by anybody, anywhere? घर में तो कोई अलग-अलग ministry है नहीं. As at most there is सास की ministry and बहू की ministry, but इसके आगे तो there are no ministries. And the children's needs are met, because otherwise they'll drive you crazy. So we need to have a community like that, and not only wait. So I think that if you look around to see how even within the given institutional structures people organize themselves, you see Punjab, for example, You know, there was a lot of talk about how WCD and education department can collaborate and what guideline needs to be written. But when you visit schools, you see people have worked it out. So one of the suggestions we had is कि ऐसे 100 schools को बुला लो, उनको stage पे बैठा दो, वही बता देंगे ना उन्होंने collaboration कैसे किया. Collaboration government order से होता है कि collaboration दोस्ती से होता है, that you have to figure out. बहुत सारे लोग दोस्त हो गए तो ऊपर के लोग भी दोस्त बन ही जाएंगे. So arrangements, I think there are many different kinds of arrangements that people do. Community में, school के अंदर, co-located आंगनवाड़ी में, and we need to look at these to really and have people speak about them because everybody is arrived at that through some logical process. ऐसा नहीं कोई randomly जाके collaborate करने लगता है. कोई फायदा होगा तभी कर रहे हैं लोग. So I would say that there is a lot of different things that can be done. A group of my colleagues went to Bangladesh recently, and they came back saying that they don't have an Anganwadi system. So we were also very aware of the fact what Anganwadis can do. But wahan pe they have a rotational mothers every month, 2 mothers coming to the center and providing, whatever is the support, maybe less trained, less aware than otherwise, but that can always be built up. So we are a country of billion plus people. I mean, surely we don't lack people to help out in important things. Right?
No, that makes so much sense. And I would just Saas और बहू की ministry, but Saas बहू ministries में भी हैं WCD जैसे में, so that's also happening. But I think if I was to, one thing that I also took away, right? I think जो आप कर रहे हैं, what you've been doing through the school readiness melas is कि helping family members, parents realize they have something to contribute. उनको बस बोलना नहीं है, वो कुछ कर भी सकते हैं. And actually I think this is ingrained everywhere. So I'll go to digital. मैं WhatsApp बहुत लोगों का स्टडी किया है इन रूरल एरियाज एंड जनरली उनको बहुत सारा कंटेंट मिलता है बट वो वापस कुछ नहीं भेजते. वापस कुछ करना होता है वो कॉल करते हैं. तो जब हम व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप्स पे कोशिश कर रहे थे कि लोगों को वापस भेजना कि आप वापस भेजो, ये बहुत एलियन बिहेवियर है विच वी डोंट रियलाइज कि एलियन बिहेवियर है बिकॉज हम तो कॉल नहीं करते, वी सेंड ऑन व्हाट्सएप. बट इट्स एंड नॉट जस्ट चलो कॉल करना एक बात है बट आप मुझे बहुत कुछ आया है मैं उसको कंज्यूम करूंगा बट आई डोंट फील आई कैन ऐड टू मच, राइट? सो आई थिंक giving them that confidence, that empowerment ki we can add and we can contribute. And now schooling is quite high, so confidence levels are high, and schooling may not be related to learning but it is related to confidence. So that is definitely the case and we can do a lot more on that. आपने self help group की बात की रुक्मिणी मीरा, I would like to sort of ask, अभी self help groups are doing a lot of different things. Governments are trying to get them to do different things as well. But government का जो पूरा infrastructure है set up, and we discussed this a bit, कि ये set up in, एक WCD ministry है, एक education ministry है, एक health अलग है, self help group की भी अलग department है. So, maybe the same person, the young mother and the child is being looked at in silos by different ministries, but probably, it's a holistic continuum. So, wanted to ask you, in this current approach, what are the negatives? But negatives so is one thing. What would a reimagined, more cohesive system, what could it look like? Or what could be the beginning points of a more cohesive system?
Thanks, Aziz. So the first thing I want to say is that we need to learn from our colleagues, the Anganwadi workers and Ashas at the grassroots, how well they integrate and coordinate. It's us who are sort of blinkered that I'm in this ministry and that ministry. But we find at grassroots level, they all come together really well. And I think some answers may come from there. We've also seen at block level and also at district level, even the supervision, they share with each other, they dovetail. So many things are happening, and I'm sure you all see that as well. I think one of the things we hear women at the grassroots say is that so many people come to us asking so many questions, taking all this information. We have no idea where the information goes, and it doesn't come back to us. तो क्या करते इतने सब इकट्ठे करके पूछते रहते हैं हमें. So, they are quite flummoxed by all this questioning. So I think, there's one answer that, if we do surveys, if we collect data reports, is there some way, and maybe that tracker we heard of will be a good way. I mean, is there some way that this can be an integrated report so that health, early childhood from the education ministry and WCD sort of comes together and is also fed back at the local level? That's one thing. And perhaps one thing, and I heard that in Bihar they had tried this. One of the IS officers there, I think it was Amarjit Sinha who had tried this, bringing, not just the top leadership of these ministries, but at district and block level also, trying to sit together and planning together. So you don't have, this army of people sort of going to that one mother just as she's getting ready to go out to the jungle or the field for her work. So I think that could be something that, I know it's not easy, none of these things are easy, but my experience is if there's a message from the top, from Gandhinagar or whatever the state capital, karo, go ahead. Give the green signal, and then I think leave it to the people in the decentralized districts and blocks to work it out, and also at panchayat level. And even in the urban areas, we see this with link workers and so on and so forth. They coordinate very well. We don't have to give them instructions, but we just need the nod from the top.
Makes sense. Rukmini, any?
So I would say a couple of things to add to Mirai. One is, we are a big country and we are very different in different parts of the country. So as I look at, these provisions that are happening now with this age 3 to 6, in the morning, we heard a lot of talk about uniformity and consistency and so on. So I think if you have a consistency of what you want to achieve, and then let the processes of how to achieve that be developed based on, the sort of objective conditions there. Again, and I was thinking I'd share this, Asar is known for your reading and math, but it has actually a lot of information on where children from age 3 to age 8 are currently. Now, you take a state like, say, Odisha. Odisha has children who remain in Anganwadis, at least according to and the data set is quite large, well beyond age 5. तो उड़ीसा के स्कूल में प्री प्राइमरी सेक्शन अभी खोलना आई डोंट थिंक सही है. आप यूपी की बात देखो, यूपी में नॉट ओनली, एंड यू लुक एट इन उड़ीसा एज 3 देयर इज वेरी स्मॉल नंबर्स ऑफ चिल्ड्रन हु आर नॉट एनरोल्ड इन आंगनवाड़ी. सो बोथ थिंग्स कि आप हो कैसे, एज 3 पे कहाँ हो, एज 4 पे कहाँ हो, एज 5 पे कहाँ हो. Now if you look at UP, there's very large section of children who are not in Anganwadi even in age 3. Now in that setting, and we also know that in age, there is early enrollment in school in class 1. What should be the reaction there if we feel that Anganwadi brings a lot of multiple benefits, health, education, introduction into a language which may not be a home language, but it's done in a very local way, then probably UP should be investing in really expanding Anganwadi coverage and doing universal coverage at age 3, because uske benefits aapko 3-4 saal baad dikhenge. So I think one is look at where we are today, look at where in a state where Anganwadis are very strong, where children are staying long, why divide that up into ab kaun school mein jayega and kaun co-locate mein jayega aur kaun kahan jayega. But in states where that is not the case, Punjab and Himachal, for example, took the stance well before NEP to say ki we need pre-primary classes in the school, and it made sense because children in those two states were going into private preschool at age 2.5. So the competition with the school was not with the Anganwadi, it was with private schools. As soon as pre-primary got into the system, enrollment into the government schools increased. I have heard, I don't have evidence, verified evidence, that जब पंजाब में ये सब हो रहा था, तो private school ने पहला साल free कर दिया था to get back their enrollment. I mean, that's the kind of competition you want, to say कि हम भी अच्छे हैं, तुम भी अच्छे हो, let the parents, choose with their feet. So I think that this variation has to be looked at. And secondly, the second point I want to make, which Sanjay Kumar in the morning made about demographics. Now, we have to take advantage of certain demographic trends that we are sitting on. My example that I'll give you is from school education, but I think we need to think about it for preschool as well. So last year, 2022-23 summer, ASAR 2022 had just come out in January, and we thought that government बहुत कुछ कर रही है in early grades. But what about the children who are going from 5th to 6th? वो तो कमजोर जा रहे हैं because 2 साल कोविड का उन्हें भी फर्क पड़ा है. So ASAR is a district level estimate. So we talked to all districts. It took a couple of months, it took 2 months, every single district in UP, Bihar and Madhya Pradesh. That's 165 districts. Just to say at district level to government, to principals, to dietes, to whoever are influential people, कि हम क्या कर सकते हैं, क्या 5वीं से 6वीं में बच्चे चले जाएं कमजोर कि हम भी कुछ कर सकते हैं. And the overwhelming view you got from everyone is नहीं कुछ तो करना चाहिए. कुछ तो करना चाहिए, गर्मी की छुट्टी है, कौन करेगा? And basically it was like, could there be 2 volunteers who are at least 10th and above who can help the 5th to 6th wala transition? We were overwhelmed by the response. I think the governments were also overwhelmed. In each of these states, lagbhag 1.5 lakh log came forward for 6 weeks, for 2 hours in the morning. So I'm saying that, and it made a big boost. I mean, in Bihar, for example, Jivika gave 45,000 volunteers. And the Jivika sort of high command was taken aback about how important education is for their members and how they need to rethink perhaps their priorities within their livelihood mission work. So we do have young people. Every time, at least in Pratham, that we have reached out, large numbers of young people at the right time are willing to give time. Now, how can that kind of an energy be harnessed for, nothing happens in 6 weeks, it takes longer. But I think 6 weeks is not a bad time to get a feel for, मेरे गांव के बच्चे ना ढंग से आगे बढ़े. उसके लिए मैं क्या कर सकता हूँ या क्या कर सकती हूँ, उसके लिए हम कैसे सोचें. Young mothers, people have spoken about all day, so I won't say more. But I think that's a really important force, young mothers and young fathers. And, if they can be, in different ways that we are talking about, brought on board, and that we know how to work in groups. Group में ताकत है. अकेले अक्सर थोड़ा मुश्किल होता है. If I'm a mother to go to school and, engage with the teacher may be difficult, but we go as 4 people, हमारी ताकत 4 से ज़्यादा हो जाती है. So how do we use these demographic kind of features of our system? How do we use existing social structures to really, feed into how can our kids get a better start? One last thing I want to say, because I know we have 1 minute left.
We're going to go over, don't worry.
No, but what, have you locked the doors or what? Because people may want to leave, The one thing is that, we don't have, I keep referring to Asar only because that's a data set I know. We've done one longitudinal study. If you look at longitudinal studies in India, there's one that Asar and Ambedkar University did that UNICEF supported, which was a 5-year longitudinal study कि early childhood से लेके second, third तक बच्चों की क्या हालत होती है. And a lot of things came out of that because you could see the kids who came out of private schools, kids who came out of Anganwadi, kids who did not go to any of these, what happened. And I think if we are serious about this, every cohort having a different experience, we need to invest in longitudinal studies which can track children. You look at the Head Start studies in the US, hundreds of them have been done based on long, you have the, NLS, the whatever, National Longitudinal Survey. They track kids for 18 years. Young Lives in India, which was done only in AP and now Telangana, is able to look at cohorts of kids who have gone through this. So investment for health, for education, for women, for a variety of human development indicators needs serious investment in. So whoever are philanthropists in this audience, please take note that this is required. It's a major investment. Niti Aayog should invest. Or I don't know who should invest. Somebody should invest. So, because then there's a lot to be learned from these.
It makes sense. We'll record this and send it to philanthropists. कहीं आते नहीं है in person. But I think, we keep talking about Heckman and so on, right? And again, all US context, can we do this in India? I think what I took away is also horses for courses, right? If you took the interplay between the school system and the ICDS, there's no one-size-fits answer, right? It has to be based on the situation. And I even feel that even if you choose a particular system, suppose you say ICDS karna hai in UP, in Maharashtra, and in Haryana, even the 3 of them, the intervention could look very different, right? And so, for example, Maharashtra is a system, probably, maybe it's a good system, it has to go to great, whereas UP is starting off, its average system, it has to go to good, and the stuff we have to do is different. So I think those are definitely something that we are also seeing on the ground. As I promised, we are going to go over, so I hope nobody is besharam enough to leave. But I think ek do questions, or I think to Mirai first. What are the new innovations, Mirai, new innovations, successes you are seeing on the ground around ECCE, around childcare, around the interplay of them? And some of them might have been, intended, some might have been unintended, but would love to hear from you on that.
So one of the things I think that people have been experimenting with, not only in our country, but in other countries like Kenya and other places, is running early childhood care through collectives and cooperatives. Our own experience has been in cooperatives. Why cooperatives? Because they are owned and managed by local people, women generally, but also fathers are involved, as I said. They are the shareholders, and they also give the direction and also the needs and so on and so forth. So I think that has been an innovation. long before self-help groups. But of course, in many states, self-help groups are also quite active, and I think are actively exploring the possibility of not just providing a service, but that this could be a livelihood opportunity also for women. I think another aspect which came up today was how do you operationalize, how do you work in urban areas? I think some of the collectives and cooperatives like our own have something to offer in that. Of course, there's no success, it's all a work in progress. I think we've heard since morning, including Rocket Learning itself, so many rich examples. It's been actually a rich harvest of examples of what can be done and innovations. One or two of the innovations I'd like to suggest from our own experience is working with the ICDS department. In fact, we have a pilot, speaking of pilots, going on in 2 remote tribal districts of Gujarat, where we've worked with the local ICDS authorities to show how ICDS can be extended to include creches as well, because most of our children, and the bulk of the children in our creches are under 3 years. So how can it be extended? How can mothers begin to trust and leave their really little ones, infants, in these creches come Anganwadis? And what is the cost? What is the extra cost? And one of the things, of course, we've been hearing since morning is the extra worker. So in this model that we are trying to pilot, there is a third worker. You have to have that person for the early childhood and also other things. I must say, unlike what was mentioned this morning, we are not so like, you're the Anganwadi worker, you're the early childhood. No, everybody mucks in. And also it's important for the Anganwadi worker, who's the leader of the team, to know what early childhood education is about in the first place. So I think some of these are things, and also I think some of the innovations in how to support those who are the carers, caring for the carers. We heard government, I understand, is not keen to have one more cadre of government servants, Ashas and Anganwadi workers. But, we do have to think about caring for the carers. And one of the things we've been experimenting with is how can we extend pension and insurance and some basic services so that they also have some kind of support system. And I think a lot of examples are coming from the States. A few months ago, I was in another meeting on childcare, and which the commissioner from Haryana was sharing not only how many creches come Anganwadi she is planning to open, but also insisting that all the public sector units first put their money where their mouth is and start creches for their workers. And also, she said, let's start with ourselves, and then we can extend this to the private sector. Just a small example, we are working with the Reserve Bank of India office in Ahmedabad. They somehow approached us because, as you all know, there's a Supreme Court order where this is required. It's not an option. It's actually a legally binding instrument that, we've conveniently forgotten, private sector as well, formal sector, anyway. But anyway, that has been a really good experience. And then we found that the RBI Ahmedabad told their friends in RBI Kanpur, Lucknow, and this is how it all goes about, with early childhood education, of course. So I think these are some of the innovations. I think there's a lot more in our country that we haven't even heard of. Today we heard about Punjab and Meghalaya, and I'm sure there's a lot more to unearth. Thanks.
Thanks, Mirai. And I think, the third worker has been talked about a lot. And I think what you said, though, that I think we have to look at the local condition before deciding who or what and why they should be there. So in some cases, it will have to be for creches. Other cases, there may not be a need for creches, but there may be a lot of children going to the Anganwadi. So you have an educator. In other cases, children go to preschool, so you have it as a person who's going to for home visits, and maybe you don't need a third person there, right? So I think it can be done in that way. And I think another thing, I remember Rukmini saying this to me long back, so I'll steal that, Rukmini, if you don't mind, which is that, why do you have to condemn the existing worker to say कि अब आप खाने बनाने वाली हैं और कोई नया आके सब पढ़ाने वाले हैं, right? So we've just, like I mentioned the survey where they said like the biggest purpose for us is कि हम बच्चे के साथ time spend करके we are able to educate them. How is the politics in that classroom going to look like? So,
sorry, I forgot one thing. If I may quickly jump in. You were asking about informal arrangements. One of the things we found, particularly आंगनवाड़ी कार्यकर भी आ गए हैं, तो मैं हिंदी में बोलूँगी. हमने ये देखा है अहमदाबाद और सूरत में कुछ महिलाएं जो है अपने घर में आंगनवाड़ी या क्रेश चलाती हैं 5-10 बच्चों को इकट्ठे करके, और माताओं को उनमें विश्वास है क्योंकि वहीं के हैं, लोकल है वगैरह। तो हम ये सोच रहे क्यों ना उनको मतलब मदद करे इस तरह, या तो लोन दे उन्हें ताकि वो ट्रेनिंग मटेरियल्स और थोड़ा रूम इम्प्रूवमेंट्स, घर भी ठीक ठाक करे, टॉयलेट वगैरह शौचालय बनाए, या फिर सीड कैपिटल उन्हें दे, और फिर उनको हमारे कोऑपरेटिव से हम जोड़ देंगे और फिर वो अपने आप ही चलाएं। तो ये भी एक इनफॉर्मल, एक्चुअली ये पूरा उदाहरण महिलाओं के तरफ से और झुग्गी झोपड़ी में तरफ से आया है, क्योंकि महिला कहते कि हम ICDS तो 2-3-4 घंटे ही चलते, हमको तो दिन भर चाहिए, हम तो 8 बजे मंडी में चले जाते, या निर्माण मजदूर है हम वहाँ चले जाते, तो फिर हम क्या करेंगे? तो ये हमारे लिए सही है। सो दिस इज अनदर ऑप्शन दैट वी आर ट्राइंग।
ब्यूटीफुल अरेंजमेंट, it's a beautiful arrangement and should be done much more. Rukmini, last word. What are you saying?
So how can I do last word? I have to say lots of things.
Last many words.
I have to just tell Anustup that I have been in pilots that have failed. Several pilots that have failed. One pilot was हमारा personal pilot था. हमारे दिल्ली के ऑफिस में we were doing lots of work in early childhood और सभी हमारे colleagues के छोटे बच्चे थे. So I said कि हम ऑफिस में एक क्रैश खोल लेते हैं. So there were murmurings, कल बात करेंगे, परसों बात करेंगे. They tried to avoid me. So complete failure. Early childhood people within Pratham did not want a crash in the office. They said दूर से आते हैं, घर में मम्मी है, सास है, उन्हीं के पास ठीक है. So failure number one. Okay. I think that urban areas में for like just working women, there are many gaps. Working women hostel नहीं होते हैं, safe जगह रहने की नहीं होती है. And crashes are not there. I keep feeling that a lot of our norms are come from sort of middle class settings. My example of my failure was people have worked out some arrangement for some time at home. तो उसी से किसी तरह से काम कर लेंगे. Until we have a culture where you have daycare as part of, normal life. In my own colony, there are 400 flats. No success in starting any kind of a even short term, because everybody wants to send their children to, Loving Minds or Kangaroo or whatever those, high cost things are.
It's not their need.
Maybe it's not their need. So I think that how do we, if we really want the women and children and reimagined together, you have to have models at all levels. It can't just be कि भाई आंगनवाड़ी को crash बना दो, बाकी लोग, कुछ और, कर ले. One more in your cohesive thing, that we talk about inclusion, but inclusion का somehow meaning हो जाता है बच्चे with special needs. Now I want to give an example कि in Pratham we like to have every full-time person who's working in our early childhood programs get certified. Because आप इतना काम करते हो फील्ड में तो उसका भी कुछ एक वैल्यू होना चाहिए, because so it's portable. एक्सपीरियंस तो है जो है. तो इग्नू का कोर्स है फॉर अर्ली चाइल्डहुड, इट्स अ डिप्लोमा कोर्स, अफोर्डेबल, बिकॉज देयर आर मेनी अदर यूनिवर्सिटीज बट दे आर वेरी हाई. नाउ इसमें जब हमने करना शुरू किया, फॉर एग्जाम्पल आई रिमेंबर इन पटना कि हमारे लोग तो कर ही रहे थे तो उसके बारे में बातचीत कर रहे थे, आंगनवाड़ी वर्कर्स भी उसमें ज्वाइन कर लिए. So that because you need some support to get these done, a little bit of help maybe monetarily or otherwise, but actually the human help was very important. In a rural block in Gaya district, Sherghati, all the Anganwadi, lots of people started doing this course. So when I met Anganwadi workers, helpers and Pratham ke log, तो मैंने पूछा आप लोग इतना कोर्स वोर्स करके करोगे क्या? Their answer was करने तो दो, उसके बाद देखा जाएगा. And actually उस ब्लॉक में private preschools kai khule with the certification. So how do you open up? Now same thing, because we were very gung-ho on IGNU, which is Indira Gandhi National Open University. Maybe somebody is here from there. Is anybody here from IGNU?
They were actually.
Now, Punjab mein, lots of people heard about this because the Pratham people were doing this. When 10,000 people wanted to enroll in the IGNU course, they couldn't. Why? Because hamara IGNU ka course at that time was in Hindi and in English and for some reason in Tamil and not in Punjabi. Now, if you want people to, everything can't be training that you're giving. There may be people who want to get certified, are willing. How do you open up this space to be able to enroll, whether completely remotely or by? So I think this support, whether you're a young mother or a, Anganwadi worker, whoever you are, बहुत लोगों को इच्छा होती है ना कि हम थोड़ा और पढ़ें, तो वो कहाँ पे जाएं जो अफोर्डेबल हो, जो एक्सेसिबल हो, और जिसके लिए थोड़ी बहुत मदद फ्रॉम विच एवर स्ट्रक्चर यूर इन मिल सके. सो आई थिंक इन दिस कोहेसिव पिक्चर वी हैव टू कीप लर्निंग. जो हमने 10 साल पहले सीखा था और अनलर्न करने में 5 साल लग गया, अब नई चीज़ें सीखने में और 5 साल लगेंगी. सो कंटिन्यूस लर्निंग इज नेसेसरी फॉर अस टू स्टे ahead, or at least along with what families want, what the country wants, and so on.
Great. So the best thing is that there is a hunger to learn. So Mirai and Rukmini had said कि अगर शुरू करेंगे तो कई दिन चल सकते हैं. So we'll have to see how many days this conference is. So that has definitely proven true. I think we've just scratched the surface with both of them, and I think they can share a lot more. But unfortunately, I do think we'll have to sort of close soon. So, a lot of the panelists have actually summarized the key points. मुझे तो पता नहीं कैसे summarize करूँ ये panel. So, I think it has sparked, a lot of thoughts in your mind, and probably everyone has taken different ideas, different thoughts about what can be done. And I think that is probably the best ending to a conference, that it doesn't answer all the questions, but it comes up with new questions and some hints to the answers. So, and none of us, I think, know the answers. None of this room knows what India's childcare and ECC really is going to look like, but we are trying to solve it. So, thank you to both of you for really doing this for so many years in such a great way.